Welcome, everyone. I'm Laura DeFranco, the CEO of Brave Healer Productions, where we have a mission to wake the world up to what's possible, one brave word at a time. And here today to help me with that mission are some of the amazing authors of a new book that we have coming out. This one is called Shaman Heart, Sacred Rebel. And you guys, this is the second book in a series from lead authors Stephanie Urbina Jones and Jeremy Pajer. And before I introduce these amazing women to you, I want to say a huge thank you to Stephanie and Jeremy. You guys, I love you so much. I'm so honored to be here guiding these book projects and all of the stellar author cast you have brought in to expand this energy. I mean, even just saying that right now gives me goosebumps. I feel like I've been on a ride of energy with you two since the beginning, and I'm very grateful to be here with you all. We wouldn't be here without you. Your vision to bring our authors together to create a book, but to bring us together in person in Teo, to do the healing work together, to bond in that way was other level for me. And I hope it was for all of the authors. I think I speak for them in saying that it was. And I can't wait. I can't wait to do more of this kind of work with you too. So thank you. So we're going to talk today to a few of the authors in this amazing Sacred Rebel project. Heather Westling is the creator of Sacred Life's Journey, where she mentors clients who want to break free from confinement and live their life. Jen Falchi is an intuitive mentor and healer who supports clients to anchor more peace, harmony, and balance into their being. And Kelly Murbach is a modern day secular shepherdess, practicing reclamation coach and celebrant who holds your cape as you step out of your zombie-like drifting into an intentional life full of connections to people and activities that nourish you. Oh, I love reading your guys' bios. I sometimes feel like I need an award for bio reading. Like, all right, I need to practice this stuff before I get it out loud. Thank you three so much. Thank you all for being here. I want to say a huge thank you, not just for saying yes to this book project, but for saying yes to a bigger challenge I had to all of you to step up and write your hearts and souls out onto these pages. And all of you did that so brilliantly. Heather, we're going to start this party with you today. Tell us about your amazing chapter.
Yes, hello and thank you. So my chapter, the backstory was I was bullied at a previous job and I didn't have any tools or support system at the time, which led me to incarceration a few times. And then realizing after my last incarceration that I wanted freedom. And I broke out of that and I started living my life, my way. I do have a restriction, which is called a felony charge, and I'm not letting that hold me back. And so it's showing others that if you have been incarcerated or even confined through traumas, you can still live your life and enjoy it.
I have appreciated you being here since the beginning and never really had a personal chance to say to your face a huge thank you for being brave enough to tell this particular story. I know that it was challenging for you to step up and write it, and here we are about to publish it. You know, what else do you want to say about that particular process? Anything?
It was a powerful process for me. Only my parents and maybe a couple other of my friends know, so not everyone knows that piece of me. And I felt that it was time for me to write it, share it with others, because I know a couple people that have struggled trying to find their life because they're having a restriction. And I'm just telling them, you can break out of it and you can live your life. I moved out of my parents' house a couple of years ago, 6 hours away, living in North Carolina, doing what I want to do.
And that I know is going to be some serious inspiration and motivation for a lot of people. When you think about, you tell me if this is the right way to phrase this, but when you think about reclaiming your freedom, does that resonate? What do you think is the most important piece of that that you want other people to know? You know, you can do it, but what else?
That you, excuse me, that you have the power, you have the strength. And I even came up with my own little quote of, even in the darkness, you still have the power. And with that, it gave me that freedom. That's where I reclaimed my freedom.
That's powerful. I'm like scribbling it down here. Even in the darkness, you still have the power. Did I
Yes.
get that right? Yeah. Um, I believe from some of the healing work that I've done, I believe in that quote almost to the point of, you know, in the darkness is where your biggest powers can be found, and an opportunity to go even deeper and into the joy than you ever thought possible. And so I love it. I love you for sharing that. And again, really appreciate you being here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jennifer, tell us about your amazing chapter.
Well, thank you. I'd love to, Laura. So that's chapter 12 in the book, Understanding and the Magic of Conscious Breath, Becoming the Commander of Your Universe. And that's pretty much all I had when I went to Teo, and that's all I had when I left Teo. So my journal notebook, my writing notebook was empty. And so what emerged was pretty unusual for me in this chapter coming forth. I got on the airplane to go home, and I was a little defeated because I hadn't written anything. And I opened up my blank notebook. I was just going to doodle in it. And all of a sudden, just writing started happening. I'd never had this experience before. So for 2.5 hours on the flight, the pen didn't stop. The pages were flipping like in this frenetic way. And then the flight was over. It was time to get off the airplane. And I'm like, wow, my story's done. I'm all done 3 weeks ahead of time. Until I got home, and then I couldn't read anything that I wrote. So it took some time to pull that out. And when I pulled it out and I typed it up and I moved stuff around and I looked at what had come forth, I said, oh no, you can't publish this. And I really had to sit with it. And what came to me was this moment. This is my truth. This is my experience. This is my story. And my soul really wants to share this part of my life with others. And so I settled down and I continued to move through the process. And here we are.
Here we are indeed. So I love your word inner standing. I love what that means to me, just, you know, moving inside to figure those pieces out. And even like Heather was talking about the darkness, like I think inner standing is a little darker to me, like when I have a visual of it, but not in a bad way, kind of more in a mysterious possibility way, right? I also love what you said about hopping on the plane and having this stuff pour out, because I've had that experience before. What I love about you is you just let it happen, right? I don't know how much you were getting in your own way with the thoughts in your head about what was happening, but I would love for you to talk about that.
No, it just happened. It just the scribbling. I think I emptied a pen and I looked up 1 or 2 times and people were just looking at me like, oh, I don't know what she's doing. So that was really fun opportunity to just allow, right? This allowing to come forth to birth what needs to be. I think this got in the way once I started typing and seeing what was formed, and then the mind saying, "Oh, no, 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 no." So, yeah.
Yeah, the proofer, the editor, the perfectionist, the comparison person, you know, they all come in and they look at that. But honestly, I think the process that you shared about that today is like the way to go in the beginning, to move it from you, from the inside to the outside. I look at that as an awareness process. I mean, there's always editing for later, right? But when you first get to look at something that comes out like how you described it did for you, that can be like a small miracle sometimes. You want to say anything else about that?
About a small miracle.
Well, no, just about, any other thoughts you had about that process.
I'll be honest, I didn't realize what a process this would be. I mean, I've got tubs of journals where I just sit down and write, and some of that process happens where it just comes forth. But I didn't realize what actually writing from an authentic place and feeling it go out into the world even before it gets published, what kind of process that was creating for me to even go with in deeper, to seek more inner standing, right? Why this is uncomfortable, what's stopping me from wanting to do this, why am I having a meltdown, why do I want to see if I can maybe not have to submit a chapter. It brought up more opportunities, right, to dig into these, I guess what you could call energetic blocks, to fully stepping out as an authentic, confident voice.
Yeah, thank you for sharing a little bit of that behind the scenes process. So I think it's one of the things I love the most about all of you is you're willing to like talk about it. You're willing to have the conversation. You're willing to bring light to it so that other people can, bask in that awareness. Everything is awareness, and all my small miracles happen in the middle of that badass awareness that you all model, all of you. Thank you so much for doing that. Kelly, how about you? Tell us about your amazing chapter.
Well, the beginnings of my chapter actually began in a friend's kitchen when Stephanie just first brought out the idea of the book about 6 months before we ever made it to Teo. And internally, I went, oh, crud. I have a rebel. She's loud and she needs to be heard. But I've always tapped into her and never really known what she was saying. So I showed up to Teo and was like, okay, we'll see what happens. Lots of fun things happened, including a firewalk that ended with a lot of screaming for me. It was really powerful. And I get home and I'm like, I know where this starts, but it's not where I think it's going to start, because my chapter starts with death talking to me. And it's not where I thought it was going to start. But along the way, I found my rebel who isn't fighting the world. She's just standing next to me and making sure that I get up every morning and try something else. And I think what's most important to me is that sometimes rebels don't have to be huge and they don't have to be loud. They just have to be really determined. And that's kind of what came out on the page. So I was thrilled when she finally showed up, but it took about 2 weeks after we got home before she showed up and told me what her name was and all that good fun stuff.
Well, I think too that a lot of us, because we began this journey with a healing adventure in the middle of sacred lands and pyramids and things, that we were probably processing stuff for a while, and then to ask you all to actually sit down and write a story sometimes I think feels impossible, depending on what we all went through or were going through, what was coming up for us. But you, my dear, had a moment, didn't you? And I think we all had a moment with you through your moment. I won't speak for others, but for me it was like, whoa. Yeah, it was a whoa for me. What is there anything you want to tell us about that piece of it?
The big thing for me about that piece is that I don't have to know the what that moment was about for that moment to have impacted me. And I think I'm an engineer by trade. I was an engineer for 20 years, and I want to know the what. And the hardest part along this healing journey is that sometimes the what just isn't there. And I have to be okay with that. And I think that was the moment where I ended up in a kitchen hollering my brains out for about an hour. It felt like 5. But it just was, I didn't have to know what I was hollering about. I was just hollering. And I was exhausted afterwards, but I felt immensely lighter, which was pretty awesome.
Thank you for helping us just understand that. But I love when you share about your background. I'm laughing just because, you know, how brave you are to say, yeah, I was an engineer for 20 years. Like my brain, you know, functioned this way. Yet here you are, again, just walking the walk of awareness, which is something I appreciate deeply in the inner circle of people that I try to curate, you know. And you can sit here today and say that, look at it, observe it, and you might be giving one of our listeners an aha moment with that kind of awareness. All of you, all of these stories that you shared, the amazing medicine that is in the chapters, same little golden nuggets of awareness that could be life changing. This is no small potato stuff to me. So Kelly, thank you for you know, for doing that.
Yeah, thank you.
So throughout this whole project, I have heard this, and mostly I think it's because now I've hung out with Stephanie and Jeremy long enough, but I've heard the saying, we laid our hearts on the altar. I've heard this over and over again, and I am starting to figure out what that means for me. It does feel like I did a version of that. Jennifer, what has that meant for you personally?
That's a good question. And I too am still unpacking the potency of that. But what I can say for me is that it's allowing a vulnerability to be present. It's not just bringing your stuff, because it's easy to bring your stuff and toss it on the altar. But it's another thing to really just bring the vulnerability and to engage intimately, not with just your own self, but with others, which is what we were able to experience through that Teo journey, to amplify what we put on the altar together and to support each other to be as vulnerable as possible, to go as deep as we could, to be as honest as we could with ourselves. And that altar was full, but I can see now how it has shifted at least my life.
There's a layer that we do with our own selves, and you're making me realize, you know, there's this whole other deeper layer when there's other people involved. People that you didn't know before. Some you might have, some you could have been friends with. I know for a lot of us, there were not a lot of new friends. But doing that work by yourself, with yourself, is hard enough, difficult, challenge. But now we put, you know, these different people into the mix. One of the other authors said something that I thought was brilliant. You know, Dan said something about, you know, learned how to love myself, and then I learned how to love other people. And when you get a bunch of people who know how to love themselves and know how to love other people together, then, you know, and it's just the magic of that was very real for me. Kelly, what's it meant to you to lay your heart on the altar?
For me, laying my heart on the altar has been a practice of lighting shame on fire.
Oh,
Because shame lives in the dark, and once you put something on an altar, anybody who walks by it can see, right? We often don't think about what we show and what we don't show. We're just way more concerned with keeping the stuff that happened to us, whether it was good or bad or, you know, really kind of awesome, private, so that nobody ruins it. But I found that laying it on the altar, letting other folks see it and have their own experience with it, has shown light on the fact that it was as hard as I thought it was. And it's not just my brain weasels telling me things. Because I ended up for many years in a cycle where I was just taking things the wrong way. in my own head, because that's what I would tell myself. Oh, that person was being unkind to me because they were having a great day and you're just being too sensitive. Right. But when I lay my feeling of, I felt like they were being mean to me on the altar, other people can come up and go, yep, that's true. And it lightened my load, right? Because I wasn't just mine anymore.
Man, did you give me a visual just now with your lighting shame on fire? I like that. I like, we all might have this visual of what this altar looks like. It's going to be different for everybody who hears this interview today. And so if you have that vision, it will be a really interesting thing to journal about, I think. But when you gave me the then light your shame on fire and let it be, right? I'm just like, yes, I like that. I think mine is a bonfire. Heather, how about you? What's it meant to you to lay your heart on the altar?
For me, laying my heart on the altar has given me, or it has changed my perspective on life. It has shifted my life because I am able to see it visually outside of me. Because a lot of times when you have it internally, it's hard to see it internally. And so it on the altar, I can see it, and then I can shift my perspective on things. Because a lot of times traumas that trigger me, I don't realize what I'm doing. And so when I have it on the altar, I can see what I need to shift.
Awareness is what that is, right? Like we got to get it out of here. Here mind, yeah, but body too. Like you can't disconnect. It's a mind body thing that we're laying out there. And then when it's out, we get to look at it, which, I mean, I know that sounds really simple, but that can be life-changing for some people to be able to see it and observe it. And thank you all for answering that question, because it's an interesting one, a hard one. I questioned whether or not to ask you about that, but I really did want to hear your individual answers. And it's part of why I love the book from a collaboration standpoint, because I truly believe we need all of your voices. And it's one of the missions of these titles is to put all of the unique voices together so that somebody can get what they need, right? It might be different for one person than it is for another. So I love that piece of it so much. Kelly, I'm going to start with you for this next question. I'm coming around to all of you, the rest of you, with this one, but many of you here practice shamanic healing. I know that all of you take a holistic approach to healing and life, from knowing you and reading your writing and understanding who you are and what you do in the world. But I want to know, when it comes to this journey that we're on, why holistic? Why does that matter?
Because just working on my brain didn't work for 20 years. I mean, if we want to talk the simple answer, if I could have done it above the neck, I would have. And I tried for a really long time. But I was still in that place of Zombieville. And I had to try something else. So I ended up in all kinds of different places. But finding a way to connect my body with my head has been the key to kind of breaking and unlocking a whole ton of things for me.
Oh, you don't know how much I love that answer too, because I think some of the secrets of the universe are in the body. I love that you say you tried for 20 years, it wasn't working out, keeping it from here up. I so get that. Heather, how about you? Why holistic? Why has that been important on your journey?
It has helped me tremendously. I have tried other different variations like medication and like the traditional talk therapy. And what all that did was keep me up in my head. It didn't help me go to my heart. And so the holistic approach helped me go into my heart and connect my mind, body, and spirit or soul. And as I was doing that work, things and perspective has changed for the better for me.
Yes, to that. I'm happy that you touched on medication a little bit, traditional therapies a little bit, because I think that's part of the message I want people to understand is that we've been taught that there are these things that are supposed to work. And sometimes it doesn't work. And I want to give people hope. And holistic is the hope, I hope, for some of you. It's like, well, if you hit this holistically, there might be things you just never even knew existed. There might be a way to move into your healing journey that feels like a huge miracle, so I think y'all are giving people hope by sharing your experiences. Jennifer, for you, why holistic?
Well, actually, it's in the word whole because we want to heal the whole thing on all levels, right? And everything's connected and integrated, and we want to integrate everything into that one unified whole. So that's the word itself speaks to the way that I believe healing happens. And I think too, for me, at least from my experience, I know that when my options were limited to medications, to go sit and meditate, before I had touched any trauma, before I had unlocked any of the doors, couldn't work. It didn't work. It didn't do anything. So once the options expanded and there were so many other tools available that found me or that I found them, then I could choose what worked for me. And then things started to shift. So shifting the playing field, so to speak. And that's the same way that I see it working for people now, is that everyone's in a unique place, has a unique soul, has a unique journey, has a unique way that things work for them. And it's about rotating the different tools, right? From conscious work where you have to have that understanding to let something go, to integrate it, from the body work, the body needing to be held, to be reminded what integration is and that there's presence outside of it. And then, this, for me, it's frequency medicine, shifting the energy through the different fields to bring in that coherence.
Yeah, I love it. I love listening to you talk about this, all of you. It's like one of my favorite subjects ever. Okay, let's close out today with this. Heather, what's it mean to you to be a sacred rebel?
For me, to be a sacred rebel is just fighting against the negative thoughts, the negative connotations, and just living. To be that sacred rebel, to fight against all odds, to where I think, well, my life is going to be this way. Nope. My rebel is saying, this is my life. This is how I'm going to live it. And of course, with a lot of grace and compassion.
Important, yes. Jennifer, how about you? What's it mean to be a sacred rebel?
So for a long time, I was a sacrilegious rebel. And so the journey has been this transformation from reacting to the world to choosing to respond to life. And so that sacred rebel now is not this energy that goes out there to fix things or to speak up for things or to push against things. It's this sacred being that stands with me, stands for me, and walks with me and helps me find that voice instead of just watching everything happen that even sometimes doesn't feel good. So that rebel is inside me, prompting me to be authentic, to be honest. And again, this whole thing about using my own voice.
I love it. I like the visual of that woman standing with me. Kelly, how about you?
Oh, nothing quite so kind. unfortunately. No, actually, I'm quite proud of my Sacred Rebel. She is an internal reference librarian, who's basically got a pile of books and a pair of glasses and a smart ass mouth, because it's my Sacred Rebel and there has to be at least one person with smart language in the room. For me, being and having a Sacred Rebel is just being able to show up with whatever color and pair of pajamas I got on that day, right? Because I don't have to be like everybody else to have a place in the world. And that's what she reminds me. And I need that reminder quite frequently.
Yeah, I'm going to repeat what I just heard. I don't have to be like everyone else to have a place in the world. That's a powerful quote. Thank you for that. I think for me, the idea of my Sacred Rebel has to do with finally prioritizing my own healing first before all the rest of the people and the stuff. And that does take some courage when you're bombarded with your shoulds and supposed tos from, how we were trained. So that would be my version of that answer. Kelly, Heather, Jen, thank you so much for what you do in the world. And thank you for being here today to share it with everyone.
Thank you
So
for having us.
Thank you.
my
Appreciate
pleasure. You guys, you're badasses, all of you. I'm so honored and grateful that you're here and that I get to play in the sandbox with the likes of you every day. I want our viewers today, I know that these conversations are deep. They're about big topics, and maybe something that one of the authors said today gave you the goosebumps or made you curious, or maybe you need some support. And I think what I want you to know the most is that these are so much more than a book. This is a community of people who really care and who are there to help you take the next step on your journey, or maybe answer a question about something you heard today. So drop down into the show notes. I have these amazing authors hooked up with their different links. Please go explore all of the awesomeness that they are up to, because it's a lot. And of course, you're invited to our book launch party. That's going to be on June 2nd at 10 a.m. Eastern. I've got the information for you down below through the Brave Healer Productions Facebook page. And if you happen to be listening to this interview after that date, well, that just means you should get over to Amazon, because our book will be ready for the world. And lastly, today, everyone, remember, your words change the world when you're brave enough to share them. So it is time to be brave. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.